Date to your potential, inspiring, educating, and empowering single members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our hosts are Peggy Matheson, betrayal trauma recovery expert, and Sharon Collier, certified life and relationship coach.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Heidi again, Heidi McLain, the fantastic Heidi McLain. She's filling in for Peggy because Peggy, lucky girl, is still on her honeymoon. Who gets a 2-week honeymoon? Come on.
I know. I'm jealous.
So fun.
Thanks for having me again, by the way.
Of course. Last time we failed to talk about our new project coming up. Heidi and I have a new project called Dating You or Dating University. It was Heidi's vision. It's pretty brilliant. You want to say a few things about it?
We're just really excited. There's an opportunity to share best practices in dating. There's a lot of little things that people miss in dating.
Yes.
And we kind of want to bridge the gap for that and take you through freshman orientation.
Yes,
and
we're
getting
outlining.
getting the nitty-gritty down and get you graduated.
Yes. So it is actually going to be dating you, like what's it like dating you?
Yes.
And how you can put your best self out there, and Dating University to get all the tips and tricks from 2 relationship coaches. So I'm super excited about it. Watch Facebook. We'll be advertising soon. And I just couldn't be more thrilled to be working with Heidi. So our subject today, however, is communication skills. Are you asking the right questions? So this came about because I was watching President Oaks, just a little clip of his talk about divorce back in 2018. Mm-hmm. I don't remember, did you notice if it was October or April?
I thought it was 9 years ago, so
Okay, I thought I saw it 2018, so maybe it was further back. Anyways, he talks about divorce, and then in the end, he says something like, if you want to avoid marrying an unfaithful or unsupportive, abusive spouse, then don't marry one. If you want to avoid having one, don't marry one. And then he goes into recommendations, which were brilliant. He says, if you want to marry well, inquire well.
Right.
So we are running with this. Also, I was just at the San Antonio Singles Conference speaking, and a lady asked me a question. So if you are listening, thank you for asking. She had been dating somebody for a year. She knew their family, his family. She knew his children, his grandchildren, and his mother, and asked, do I ask him if we're ever getting married? To which I responded, if you've been dating a year and are uncomfortable asking, there's a problem. Heidi's face just went. There is a big problem. So we wanted to talk about communication skills. So to start, why don't we ask those questions? Heidi, you had a good response before I give mine.
Sure. So a lot of us are afraid of conflict.
Yes.
And we're afraid to ask the hard questions because we don't want to cause a rift in the relationship, or we just don't feel comfortable being put on the spot. We feel like, we're exposed when we do that. And it is really imperative that we're able to have those crucial conversations to have a foundation to stand on. But
really?
We're just not trained in it.
Well, you know what? We aren't. We are trained to kind of walk on eggshells a little bit to please everybody,
right.
And especially women as little girls. It's like, we're always polite and we don't blurt out things and things like that. Just to add to that, since I talk about love chemicals all the time, I'm like, nobody here has heard about love chemicals. A lot of times we're so happy in the relationship because we have somebody, we're spewing all these chemicals. We are walking on eggshells because we don't want to rock the boat in that direction. And so, generally speaking, relationships do make us happy unless they're really abusive or otherwise. But we need to rock the boat. If this is a commitment, a lifetime commitment, we need to rock the boat. So I have divided this into 3 categories. The first one I want to talk about is questions that you might put out there to establish compatibility. Excuse me. Okay. Beginning in the relationship. Okay, coming from the yellow personality. what's your idea of fun? We need to ask, right?
Yeah.
Because we need to be compatible in the fun department.
Right.
Was a big thing I had with my husband. We were so busy making schmoopy faces at each other and being romantic and planning for the future that we never talked about fun. Like we really didn't go on dates while we were dating. And so what do you like to do for fun? How do you prioritize fun? How much fun do you need? I'm an extrovert. I need social things.
Can I talk about this just a little bit?
Oh, of course.
So it was really interesting when I was dating my children's father. I thought we were on the same page. We would go out for walks. We'd go bowling. We'd go out and do ice skating and all these different things, which is something I love. I like being active in all different kinds of things. And I just thought, I found a person I can do all these things with, and just assumed that because we were doing those, that he must love it too. So why would I need to have that conversation?
Right.
A month and a half after we got married, he only wanted to stay and sit on the couch.
Right.
He's like, well, I only did those things because you wanted to do those things. And now we're married, and
Yeah, I don't want to do those things.
I don't want to do those things. And I'm like, if I had known that, I wouldn't have chosen you necessarily as
Right?
my partner, because
Well, yes. We tend to do that. This is why dating for a long time is important.
yes.
I don't know how long you dated him. Do you want to share?
Well, that's a whole other podcast, but I'll say that I knew him for 4 years as friends.
Oh, okay.
And we dated for a relatively short period of time because
Right.
we were friends. And he knew all the things I like to do because we were friends. And so when we did date, he did those things because he already knew I liked them. But that wasn't what he wanted or who he was. But it gave me this false sense of, oh, we're on the same page.
Right.
And then after we were married, it was like, oh, you mean,
He already he bagged the girl. He was good.
yeah.
Yeah. So something we really do need to clarify.
Yes.
Something we need to clarify. Ask the question, what do you like to do for fun? What do you really like to do for fun? And maybe go do that just to make sure.
Yeah, have the conversation.
Yes. Are you a morning person or a night person? This is establishing compatibility, right? Because that's kind of important. If one person's a morning person and one person's a night person, this is going to be an interesting dynamic. When we talk about compatibility, there's some things you can overlook and work with. But if there's so many things that you're not compatible in,
Right.
that's when you really need to take a look at it.
Right. And how are you going to date anyway if one's up really late and the other's up really early? Your schedules aren't necessarily going to match up either. So,
Yeah.
I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, of course.
Of course.
But,
If
yeah.
that was the only thing you had to
Right.
overcome, but it's when they start building on each other, right?
100%.
Love languages. In our brainstorming, Heidi had some interesting things to say about love languages.
So I think a lot of people understand what the different love languages are.
Yes.
But I think we're not necessarily as self-aware as we think we are. I know my main is physical touch, and then the second is time. And I was dating somebody for a little bit, and when I asked him what his love languages were, he said gifts. Was his love language. He loved to receive gifts. And so I'm like, so like on the way over to his house, sometimes I'd like get his favorite Slurpee or whatever, and I'd bring it and he'd look at it and be like, whatever. And I'm like, whatever. You told me your love language is gifts, and I'm making these
Right.
little extra steps and you're not appreciating them. So what's up with that? But I noticed that he always wanted me with him, like sitting on the couch. If he was wrapping up a conference call, he'd tap the couch and be like, sit next to me, or wanted me to go with him to like a dental appointment or something like that. And I'm like, no, your love language is time.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So, I mean, really, if you don't know, take the test. Some people, like you mentioned earlier, that he liked to give gifts.
yes.
Well, I like to give gifts. I'm a gift giver. I don't know why, but I love to give gifts, but I'm not necessarily a gift receiver. I don't need gifts because I'm a time person. At my birthday, people are like, I don't know what to get you. I'm like, just take me to lunch. Just spend some time with me. And so, be self-aware. Also, when you dive into love languages, when you're asking what's your love language, ask who spoke it the best.
Ooh, I love that question.
Yeah. Why? Why do you feel like this person spoke your love language so well? Because that's going to help you speak their love language better.
Right.
And you hate to ask, okay, what does that look like? Oh, you're a quality time person. What does that mean? But you know what? Sometimes that's important because this is how we receive love. And our love languages are really important.
Yeah, and asking in which way do you feel the most love too?
Yeah.
More than just the love language, like you said, who did it the best, but asking them even just if there was one person or one thing that somebody did that stood out to you to this day.
Yes.
That you'll always remember. What is it?
Yes. Those things are important.
Yeah, I remember somebody I had dated, he turned 40. Clearly it was like yesterday.
Of course.
But he was huge into this Major League Baseball team, and it was the San Diego Padres. And so I couldn't be out there for his birthday, but for his birthday, I bought him really great seats. I contacted the stadium and wished him a happy birthday on the Jumbotron.
Oh, my gosh.
I got him a T-shirt.
People should date Heidi.
Right? Hello. And then I also wrote them a letter, and they wrote him a letter and said, thank you for being a long-standing fan. And they gave him coupons and stuff for concessions.
Oh, my gosh.
And so, he told me that he'll always remember that.
Right. That is awesome. That is amazing. Okay, still in establishing compatibility, religion. So we're an LDS podcast, but Heidi brought up the point. Not everybody thinks of our religion the same or lives it the same.
Yeah, that's 100%. Different people have different activity levels. Some people go to church every week. Some people go every couple of months. Some people read their scriptures every day. Some people go to the temple. Some people don't.
Right.
And really establishing where you're at and having that open communication. Now, I'm not saying you can't bridge the differences. You can.
Right.
But you have to appreciate people where they're at and say, can I live with this? And is this what I envision for myself? If they go once a year, okay,
Right.
and you go to the temple every week, are you going to be okay going to the temple by yourself? You can't go forward with the expectation that they're suddenly going to change and they're going to
Right.
become active because you're there and they're going
Right.
to want what you want. And so being very clear about what you want, where you're at. And like I said, you can always bridge those gaps. I'm not saying that's necessarily a deal
Right.
breaker,
Right.
but it is really important because, like, on a Sunday, what does a typical Sunday look like for you?
Yes, that's a big one.
And what's their typical Sunday like, and how do they want to approach it? And when you come together, what's that going to look like? So.
Right. Another thing I used to be told is, are you active LDS? And I'd say yes, and then they would say, well, maybe this is my time to get active, which is not the way to approach it. You know,
Right.
if you want to get active, don't get active because I'm active, because it's not going to work the same as if you have the desire to get active and attend church or the temple or otherwise. So be careful. Be careful with that one, but really clarify, because
Yes.
it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody.
And that stress level will get higher and higher the closer
Yes.
it gets to becoming married. And in fact, I had an engagement breakup over that very thing. He thought he wanted to become more active. And I was like, okay. But I never used it as a pressure point. But I was like, okay, we're on the same page. We want to go the same direction. And he decided as we got more and more serious, that's really not the lifestyle he wanted.
Right.
And then instead of telling me because he didn't feel comfortable,
Right.
then started sabotaging the relationship. And
Interesting. Yes.
so, anyway, so yes, it's very, very important to have those conversations and be
clarify.
honest
Yes.
about it. And, it's okay to be honest.
Yes. It is okay to be honest, because you're saving yourself a lot of heartache in the future. So make sure. Holidays and travel, we kind of grouped those together. What's your dream vacation? Are you a traveler? How do you approach the holidays? Some people are big celebrators and some people aren't. Some people celebrate everything and some people celebrate hardly anything. An area that you should probably establish compatibility in. Once again, you take the good with the bad and you take the compatible with the incompatible. But this might be, if you are a huge traveler and they are not, this might be a huge riff. holidays, I mean, people can roll with a holiday. It's like, I'll be a good sport for one day if somebody's a holiday lover. But there are some things in there, ask the questions, dig deep. Are you an international traveler? Do you just want to see the 50 states? Are you a homebody that really you're good going to a couple towns away for a little getaway, like a more of a staycation? So just things that probably just need to be talked about. Heidi brought this one up, dating goals. Super important. I hadn't thought of it.
Well, yeah, different people are in different places. Like when
Yes.
I first divorced my ex-husband, I was not in a place where I wanted something serious. I wasn't ready for that. I'm still trying to heal and just figure things out. My world was topsy-turvy, there's changes in living arrangements and all those type of things. And so when I first started dating, I let everybody know. I said, look, I just am looking to go out and have fun. I want to go to a concert. I'd like to have somebody go with me. Or if there's a movie I really want to see, I'd like that companionship. But beyond that, I'm not really looking for anything. And the person I started dating at the time actually was in the exact same place. And we're like, good, awesome. We have the same goals.
Yes.
And we actually really liked each other. We ended up dating for a year, but then when we moved past that point, we were like, okay, now we want to date more seriously. We didn't have that compatibility. And we broke up. But you know what? I am so grateful for that relationship. It was fun. It was fulfilling. It helped both of us have time to heal. We had that companionship.
Yes.
And it was great. But if you're like, you know what? I'm ready to find my person. I want to settle down. You're going to ask a bunch of different questions
Yes, you are.
than what you're going to do if it's like, hey, let's just go to a movie.
Yes, that if it's just a casual thing.
Yeah.
But
so
yeah,
you want to make sure you're on the same page. on it.
I really loved that. What do you want in a partner? This was another good one Heidi brought up. Do you know? I'm big on the list. Make your list. What do you want? And your list changes, doesn't it?
It does. It can be, I think some people get too stuck on the list that it has to look like a specific thing. But
Right.
but you should have core beliefs on there, like
Yes.
loves his family.
Yeah.
Does the right thing regardless if anyone's looking or not.
Right.
Has a sense of humor. Like,
Mine's loyalty.
yeah.
Loyalty is huge for me, but I always do the negotiables and the non-negotiables because a lot of times there's a whole lot of non-negotiables. It's what you want, but then you find so many other things in the person that you're like, okay, some of those can go.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. You need to allow space enough for them to be them.
Yes.
And to receive the gifts they have to offer and not be so rigid in that, but be secure in the things that matter. Like you
Yes.
said, loyalty, transparency, honesty,
Yes.
those things.
There's some really big non-negotiables that you need to be aware of. Foods. I just bring this up. My husband was the pickiest eater ever. And he'd say, I don't even know what to make you for dinner because there were like 7 things that he really liked. And he'd go, just go whip something up. And I'm like, that's like super defeating because he was so very picky. Foods, food allergies, loves, disloves, dislikes. Do they have a funky diet? Do they eat really healthy stuff? It's kind of fun to find a lot of this stuff out.
Yeah.
Like how do they eat? I don't care for seafood. I'm allergic to avocados. Is that a deal breaker for somebody? Maybe,
Yeah.
But so just another place to dig.
Yeah. You could always ask the ever-loving favorite question that people like to ask, does pineapple belong on pizza?
So I think it does. I don't know. Do you think it does?
Totally.
Oh, okay. Oh, high five.
Yay. I'm on Camp Pineapple all the way.
So I love the barbecue chicken with pineapple on it.
I've not tried that. I'll have to try that.
You will have to try it, yes. So
Dang.
it's not just Canadian bacon and pineapple.
Well, mine is actually, I call it the Heidi special.
Oh.
It's pepperoni, jalapenos, mushrooms, and pineapple.
Oh.
So you have the salty, the sweet, and spicy.
And the spicy. Heidi is spicy.
Just a little bit.
I love it. Last one in the fun category, the establishing compatibility. Hobbies, sports, and talents. Maybe some other interests. Do you like the same things? That is super important. Or are you willing to learn new things? Maybe you don't like the same things now. There's a lot of people who haven't tried pickleball. I'm not really good at pickleball, but I love pickleball. Someday I might get really good at pickleball. But, it's like, is somebody willing to come and play pickleball with me?
Yeah.
You don't have to be good at it because we can suck together. I'm the same with bowling. For some reason, I really like bowling, even though I only go 3 or 4 times a year. And I'm not really good at it. But are you willing to try it?
Yeah.
Are you willing to roll along with it? You don't have to be on the same page, but it's glorious. When you are on the same page with your hobbies and interests and things, that is wonderful. That is so much fun.
One of my very first dates and most fun date, I went with a gentleman and we went bowling and we did awkward bowling. Have you ever done that?
No.
So each time we were in charge, or each pin frame, we came up with a new rule. So maybe it was like you'd have to spin around twice and then throw the ball, or you'd have to throw the ball left-handed, or you'd have to skip up to the line and then throw the ball, or be blindfolded to bowl. And it was just to be silly and fun and creative. And we just had such a blast. And so it was memorable. It's going to be one of my favorite dates.
Right. I'm like, that would just make me worse at bowling, but I get what you're saying.
But it puts you on a worse playing field
Yeah.
at the same
Exactly.
at the same time.
Exactly. All right. You ready to move on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We're going to move on. This is after you've established that you're compatible and you want to explore more in the relationship. We're going to move forward to the gathering information stage. Okay, this is important. Past relationships. Mm-hmm. What were those like? I always love to hear how somebody talks about their ex. Because if they go into aggression first thing, I'm like, okay, number one, they probably need more healing because I'm a life coach and I know this stuff. And number two, it's like, do I want those kind of things said about me? Mm-hmm. If our relationship should end. So digging into past relationships, sometimes people aren't comfortable doing that, but I think it's important that you can do that, because it tells a whole lot about the person.
And I'd like to point out the whole point of what we're talking about is allowing each other to ask the questions.
Yes.
So many times people go on a first or second date and one person will spew everything. Hey, just want to let you know this is what happened in my relationship, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And either they don't take any accountability or they take accountability for everything. And you've just sat there for 40 minutes of your first date talking about their past relationship and you're just feeling like, okay, I just was squirt in the face with a fire hose.
Right, exactly.
And so this is about being able to ask those questions. And you can give succinct answers. You don't have to go into the history of, this one day, this is what happened. Then that led to this. And then I got mad because of this. Or this is how it impacted us. And then I should tell you about, that's like exhausting. Just even thinking about it makes my head numb.
Right.
But it should be like, what was the best thing about your last relationship?
Yeah.
What would you change and make different about your past relationship? And you shouldn't talk about that till like the third or fourth.
Yeah, no, wait to talk about this. Like, establish some other things first before we get into this, because this is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, keep things lighthearted in the beginning and then get into the heavy stuff. But, past relationships are important to talk about. And know that anything you're going to ask, you need to be willing to answer yourself.
Yes.
And this is part of the communication process, is being willing to get, to speak the same. So past relationships for sure. Relationships with your parents. Your parents influence so much.
Yes.
So do theirs. What were your parents' relationships like? What did you get from your parents? What do you bring in relationships that maybe you got from your parents, good or bad? My dad yelled a lot. I didn't ever think I'd be such a yeller, kind of thing. But dig into the relationships. How are the men with their moms?
Yes.
That's very, very telling.
Yes.
How are women with their moms? Sometimes that's telling. So dig into questions about parents.
And especially because a lot of times children are involved when you're dating.
Yes.
You want to know what their disciplinarian type of style is.
Yes.
Maybe not theirs right now, like their motto, but like how they were disciplined as kids.
Right.
and then say, well, what's different now? And you kind of get a feel of,
Yes.
because sometimes we try to compensate, right,
Right.
for something different, and it
Right.
may gel with yours. I mean, you're not saying, hey, let's raise these kids together and whatever, but it's just
Right.
like, oh, how was that for you? And was your mom or your dad the disciplinarian? And
Yeah.
and what's a funny story about that, you know? And
Yeah, and I ask funny stories about childhood. You know,
Yeah.
was childhood good or was childhood bad? What are they still hanging on to from their childhood?
Right.
Very important things to ask. But those that can actually be a good conversation. But it's just something that you should probably know. We were talking earlier about two people who really want to get married, and I know I brought this up before. Two people who you find two people who really, really want to get married, and none of this stuff happens.
Right.
None of this stuff, and they're just like hoping for the best. Like, we're just jumping in and hoping for the best. You know, they're asking 2 or 3 questions and nothing else is figured out. So this is why this stuff is so very important.
Sharon laughs at me because I coined a phrase. It's the DDP.
Oh, yes.
The desperate dating pool. You're cute. I'm cute.
Yes.
You're LDS. I'm LDS. We've gone out twice. I've kissed you. You've kissed me. Okay, let's get married.
Yep. Yeah. It's like, nope. She's like, go jump back into the desperate dating pool. I love that. Because that is really where you're fishing from.
Yes.
If you're in that state. If you're not willing to ask hard questions. More than just, you know, sex and money and things that we're going to get into. Everybody's like, oh, we've talked about the hard things. It's like, I bet you haven't. You know, and I can ask questions and they're like, oh, no, we haven't talked about that. Oh, no, we haven't talked about that. So, yeah.
Can I bring up one more thing from
Sure.
the DDP pool?
Absolutely.
Have you ever sat there and had somebody you want to get to know them, but they only talk about themselves?
Yes.
If somebody is only willing to talk about themselves, they're not interested in developing a relationship with
They're
you.
not.
They're in the DDP.
Yeah, they are. They are. They're just looking for someone to just tag along their life with them. You know, honestly,
Yes.
they are. It's like if they're not interested in asking questions, because you're sitting here and being involved in asking all these questions, and if they're not like, well, what do you feel about that? If they don't care, they're just looking. They might as well get a dog. Honestly, you know, you don't want to sit on their leash and
Right.
just ride along life with them, and that's pretty much what you'd be doing.
Yes.
All right, moving along to politics. Okay. Ooh. I remember there was a couple years ago. One was Democrat and one was Republican. Do you remember? Like, he had no hair. I remember that specifically. They did end up getting divorced, but they made it work for a really, really, really long time. You know, hopefully that's something that you could work together on. You know, but it's something to be discussed. You know, and if somebody's really heated about it, maybe, and you're in a different party, that might be something that is not going to be a thing, you know? So hopefully that conversation goes well.
I think that falls under the same category like we discussed with religion.
Yes.
Where are you on this on the spectrum
Yes.
of it? You know, you can be in different camps and view things from different perspectives. And, you know, it's really interesting. My ex-husband and I took the same college course. We watched the same video. We answered the same question on our paper, and we answered it completely differently.
Ooh,
And we both got the question right.
interesting.
And I was like, what? How could I get it right? How could you get it right?
Right.
We answered it completely different. And so we did. We sat down with our professor and we said, okay, explain this to me. And she was like, well, if you look at it from this perspective, then him saying this would be 100% accurate. If you look at it from the opposite perspective over here, what you're saying is equally accurate. So that's why you both got it right. And so I think giving space for each other to express and be able to have empathy and try to look at life
Right.
from each other's lenses, it doesn't have to be combative.
It doesn't.
It can be actually exciting because you actually learn things that you hadn't even thought about before.
Exactly. Learn things from a different point of view.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, sometimes that's exciting. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I just learned something new today. Okay, conflict resolution. Moving on to conflict resolution. Okay, these are some really good questions because a lot of times people sit around and they're just making schmoopy faces at each other and they're like, I can't ever imagine having a fight with this person, right? So what are they like in an argument?
Yes.
What are they like if somebody's with another person's bad manners toward them? Another person's bad temper, how do they react to another person coming at them?
Road rage.
Yeah. So my husband was a horrible person behind the wheel of a car. And I just don't care. I just now got to get from point A to point B, and hopefully I'll let somebody merge in when I don't have to because Utah has no merging laws. Hopefully I'm polite in traffic, and but that was his big buggy thing. It was like, oh my gosh. And the kids learned to swear in their car seats because my husband was so irate behind the wheel. So, watch this stuff. What are they like in bad traffic? What are they like with a slow internet? Change. How do they handle change? You don't think that's a conflict thing? It can be.
Oh,
How do
yeah.
they handle unexpected change? So ask all the questions. See them in different situations. That was another thing President Oaks said. See them in a variety of situations because you need to know these things. And if you haven't seen them in these things, establish in advance what conflict resolution. Not just what it's going to look like, where. Where are we going to go to settle this? We're going to go sit down at the kitchen table. Maybe we're going to go sit out in the car away from the children. Where are we going to go to talk this through like two rational human beings instead of exploding and scaring the kids or the dog or, whatever.
Right. And establishing it up front and having the conversation about it is important. And owning your stuff is so important in there, not being embarrassed and trying to be like, I don't want you to see all my baggage. But seriously, if you're someone who can't think straight in the moment when there's
Right.
conflict, then talk about it ahead of time and say, okay, when this happens and I become overwhelmed, I withdraw and I
Right.
need to walk away. And the reason that's so important is the other person, if you haven't talked about it and you walk away and they've had some abandonment issues,
Yes.
you've just
Yes.
deepened that wound for that other person. And they're like, are they coming back? Did they just leave me? I can't say anything right. And it creates that I need to walk
Yes.
on eggshells situation
Yes.
because it's like, well, they're going to leave. So just like everybody else, they're going to
Yep.
leave, right?
Yep.
Whereas if you know up front, you're like, okay, so they told me that they walk away and they need time to think, but they will be back.
Yes.
And say, how much time are we talking? Are we talking a week? Are we talking 20 minutes? Just so
Right.
you can manage that expectation so that your own anxiety doesn't go out the window. Or yelling if somebody's been triggered over something and you're like, hey, I know that if I'm triggered on specific things, I lose my temper. It has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
I am triggered. And if you give me 40 minutes, because I don't know how many people know, there is a timed wave of triggers. And it never
Your
lasts.
fight, flight, freeze, and a
Yeah.
freeze. Yes, it takes like 45 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I have heard that.
45 minutes, but no more than 45 minutes. And then the rational thinking brain comes back.
back.
And so if you can ride that wave and be like,
Yes.
okay, this is an anger response. She's shutting down or he's shutting down. Okay, this
Yes.
is a freeze response.
Yes.
I'm going to give him an hour. Let's reconvene. Let's go get an ice cream. Let's go to
Yeah,
our quarters, whatever.
Exactly.
But having these conversations helps you know, and it helps you manage your own maybe triggers or traumas or whatever.
Right. Super, super important that you know how to resolve conflict with that person.
Yeah.
Heidi included, what's too hot or too cold? Temperature control in the house. Something that definitely needs to be discussed.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't know. I was raised in the camp. You always keep your house at 72 degrees. It's not too hot, not too cold, whatever. And
See, I'm 68 degrees.
yeah, see, I would be freezing and be like, give me the sweater, give me the blanket.
Right.
But I lived in Texas for 20 years.
That's
and
true.
so it's like, okay, is it 109 today or not?
Oh, 72 would be delightful.
So yeah, so
Yeah,
that's when it
109.
gets too cold. But here in Utah, it's like, 72 is hot.
Yeah, kind of. Just depends.
So, but there are always power struggles. It's
Yeah.
turning up the heat, or my ex-husband used to have the fan on all the time, even if the house was at 68 because he wanted it cool, then he'd have to have the fan above the bed. So literally in the middle of summer, I'm sitting there with an electric blanket on my half of the bed,
Right.
and he's sitting there like, no sheets.
Right. That's so funny. Okay, also we have, Heidi put this one, how do you like being taken care of when you're sick? I had a friend text me, a guy friend, and he texted me, he goes, I have a man cold. It's horrible. I'm positive I'll be dead by morning. What does that look like? What does that look like? My husband was a victim of the man cold. He was a big baby. And how did he want to be taken care of? He wanted to be left alone. Thank you for telling me that.
Really?
Thank you for telling me that. Yeah. And it's like, peek my head in every once in a while. Do you need anything? I wasn't going to respond to a bell, but, good to know. When I'm sick, I want the same thing. I just want to sleep. And you know what? Just peeking on me every once in a while. That's something that is valuable to know, I think.
The reason that was important, I'm glad you shared that, because when I was married, I thought, I will let him rest.
Yeah.
And because I thought that's what he'd want.
Right.
And so I would clean the house extra clean because I'm like, if it's more clean, then they'll get better, and I'd make soup or whatever.
Right.
And when he'd wake up, then I could take him the soup in or whatever. And here's your medication and just let him rest and do his own thing. And he just kept getting grumpier and grumpier with me. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And he's like, well, I thought you'd sit in here with me. And I'm like,
oh,
why would I sit next to you when you're sick?
Why would I catch your virus?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what his mom used to do. And so for him, that's how he felt love. His mom would sit next to him and, rub his head and be like, oh, I love you and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, well. So he felt completely abandoned by me. And I had no idea. And for me, I was just like, okay. So we ended up having that conversation.
Right.
But you can avoid some of those things.
I know. That's why we have conversations in advance.
Well, and to me, this also includes how are you when you're hangry?
Oh, yes. That is, well, you know what? I think that's going to come out in dating. Yeah. Hopefully, and if it hasn't, that's when you ask. Yeah. Because you're not going to see every single situation. It's like, my daughter is the hangriest person I have ever met. It's like, oh my gosh, we need to feed you. I mean, like Jekyll and Hyde. It was like, what just happened? What just happened?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and what I found is I am like a toddler now. At 3:00, I need my snack and my drink and a nap. 15 minutes.
Right.
If you give me those things, I'm good to go. And it was so funny because I did tell somebody I was going on a few dates with, and at 3:00 one day, he's like, so do you want, what did he say? He said, should I bring you over some string cheese?
A juice box?
And an apple.
That's so funny. You're like, yes,
and
please.
I was like, oh, that is like the best idea. If some guy brought me that, I was really like eternally grateful. I was like, yes.
It's like, well, if I don't have to think of it myself, that's really cute.
I know. So anyway.
Hangry's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next subject, setting expectations. This is like when you are ready to get married. Yeah. This is like we're far enough along. We know the goods and the bads. We're accepting. Let's set some expectations.
So one expectation that I think is really important to talk about is each other's definition of what betrayal is and what it looks like.
Oh, for sure.
Because that looks different to each person. Sometimes people think betrayal is only set aside for if you're talking to members of the opposite sex, whether you're on or off social media or former friends and things like that. But betrayal looks like so many other things, like maybe talking to a family member or friend about your relationship instead of talking to each other. Yes. Maybe taking the side of a family member who's not supportive of your significant other. That's a betrayal. Spending money that you guys have talked about. Like I had a client just yesterday, we were talking about it, and they wanted to get a duvet for the bed, and they had agreed on one that cost $200, and instead they spent $1,200. Which is a significant hit to your budget.
Yes.
And so that's a betrayal. So identifying what betrayal is like for each other and when you've experienced it before and how you can be on the same team.
Yeah. And that's really the important thing, is being on the same team. You're so smart, Heidi.
So are you.
Thanks. Okay. What about minor things like splitting chores? Back in the 50s, everybody knew their role, right? Mom stayed at home and vacuumed in her pearls. And
I have a tiara.
Yeah. Oh. I'm like, I need a tiara. But Dad went to work and Dad mowed the lawn and everything was kind of established. Well, now it's not. So it's something that you should probably establish before you get married. So you're not like, oh, really? You want me to mow the lawn and take care of the kids and that, So you're not surprised. But, split it up in an amicable way that you both agree on and that you're both happy with, honestly. Where do you want to live? Because in our situations, we would be combining two homes. Or another question, retirement. What does retirement look like? Because that might look like two different things
Yes.
for you both.
Yes.
You know, besides the financial part, what does retirement look like? Are we going to go live on an island somewhere? Are we going to go live in the city and play tennis all the time? What does it look like? So very important things to be talking about.
Can I include in there prenups?
Oh, yes, so important.
Yeah, and how you view that, and is that even a thing? But since you were talking about retirement and things
Yes.
like that, because that's so important. And I just had a couple graduate last night, so I'm so excited. But they are both in their mid-50s and getting married, and that was him holding back from moving forward in the marriage because he wanted to have a prenup and he didn't want to hurt her feelings by asking it, and instead was hurting her feelings by not moving forward.
Right.
But they were able to resolve that. They got an attorney. They talked about it. They had the crucial conversations.
Yes.
And they were able to settle that. And so now they're setting a date. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. Heidi does premarital coaching. That's so awesome. I haven't done that yet. I've done married couples, but not the premarital. You spender or saver. Talk about money. Talk about all aspects of money. And I like that you brought up the prenup. The prenup, it protects both of you.
Right.
And people don't realize that. They're like, what? He doesn't want to share his money, And it's like, and it protects the children.
Right.
It's such a good idea. But are you a spender or saver? Like Heidi was saying, the betrayal part of finances, how are you splitting? How are you splitting the bills? This should all be established before the marriage starts. I can't tell you how many people I talk to that were like, oh, we never talked about finance, and we fight about it all the time. Okay? Money is a big one to fight about.
Yes, and your relationship with money. And the
Yes.
reason I say that is there are some people who live in a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And they freak out over every little thing. Oh no, my tire blew out. Oh my gosh, this is the biggest crisis ever. And then there are people who are like, okay, I've put a little aside for a rainy day and I will manage it. We'll take care of it. I'll be fine.
Right.
Or like you said, are they a spender or a saver? But there's also people who have the abundant mindset. And it's like, you know what? I've got $5 in my account. I'm sure I'll have enough for lunch by lunchtime.
Right.
And they do.
Yep.
They figure it out.
Yep.
And they're not afraid of it at all. But you get those two together.
Right.
And it's like, they freak each other out and cause each other trauma. And
Right. Or, is a person that my mom was a compulsive spender and my dad was a really good saver. He was very frugal, but on the subject of frugal, are they too frugal?
Right.
Because you know what? I like to go out and have fun. To me, I'm not going to be around after I die to spend my money. That's what I'm leaving to my kids. So I'm going to enjoy my money now.
Yeah.
I'm not irresponsible about it, but why would I be saving all that for my kids? Because by the time I die, they're going to be established in their lives and whatever they get is just going to be a bonus.
Right.
So I'm a half spender, half saver, because I like to live life.
Right.
Something somebody should probably know about me. And if they're a super tightwad, they're not going to like that.
Well, yeah, and also how you're going to address issues. I mean, we talked about how you manage conflict, but how you manage the issues when they come up about money. Because what happens if he decides he wants to buy a boat and you want to, I don't know, go on a
Travel or
vacation
something.
to Hawaii or something, and you both want to earmark the same amount of money? How do you balance that out and negotiate that? So it's really good, there's some who just say, well, it's my way or the highway.
Right.
And that's,
No, it's a big conversation, though, and it's a conversation that needs to happen. And, if you're not a good communicator now, just start practicing. Just start saying things maybe outside of your comfort zone because these things need to be said. Go ahead.
And can I say, not just said, if you're going to get married, so I encourage my couples to write it down and write it in a contract.
Oh.
Because then they can pull it out and say, what did we agree to?
Yes.
Because, well, you said this. No, I think, and our memories get selective sometimes,
Yes.
and sometimes they get faulty.
Yes.
But when you have that, and then also throughout the marriage, I have them pull it out and say, okay, well, what did you agree to?
Right.
And then it's like, oh, yeah, we both signed our names. We both put in this
Yes.
contract what we were willing to do. And it's actually saved several marriages.
Right. But if that needs to change, because sometimes,
Right.
situations make it need to change, that should be a calm conversation and a
Right.
lot of compromise. It's like, okay, I thought I'd be happy with this current situation, but I'm not happy with this current situation. So how can we make it so that we're both happy with this current situation? We'll put a little addendum on the contract
Yes.
and,
Yes.
we'll both sign it and say it's okay. Because not everything you decide is going, because you don't know what marriage is like, is going to apply. But it should be able to be a calm conversation, just saying.
Yeah, things should all be open for renegotiation.
Yes. But it's like, okay, I'm just not happy with it because of A, B, and C, not I'm just not happy with it.
Right.
Back it up. Back it up with some things. And, okay, how do you handle different sex drives? The sex conversation. Okay, we're not going to get too much into it, but is there a compromise?
Yes.
Is there a compromise? I want it all the time. I'm not comfortable with it. Okay, what's our compromise? Twice a week? What are both going to be happy with? I can do that,
Right.
So make sure you have the sex conversation. The last one's kind of funny. Social media. What goes on social media and what doesn't? Okay, let's agree on that.
Yes.
Let's agree on that so that you're not fighting. And that can go anywhere. That can go anywhere in the dating process, honestly, because, what one person is comfortable with, another person may not be.
Right.
And Heidi brought up a good point. Do you remember what you said about it? About, being on the same page with the relationship, what the relationship means.
Yeah.
Early on in the dating process, it's like, what does a relationship mean? And what does that mean? As regards to, if we're in a relationship, can I like somebody else's post?
Right. Yeah. I remember that. I had gone on a couple of dates with someone, and they were really a great person, and I liked spending time with them. And we were talking about possibly becoming exclusive, but he still wasn't quite ready to move forward into something exclusive. And we were going back and forth, but we weren't exclusive yet. And I'm like, okay, well, if we're not exclusive, somebody posted a picture. It was a friend of mine, and I just said, hey, great smile. And he took that as, oh, well, she's flirting with him, so forget it then. He was looking for an excuse, basically,
Right.
to cut,
Right.
which is fine. But, if he really was all in, and I knew he was all in, I never would have made that comment out of respect for him.
Right.
But because we had not had that conversation and we
Exactly.
were not exclusive, we didn't do that. And so that's why also having these conversations, I'd been talking to somebody for a couple of months, and we were really building a connection, but he wasn't asking me out on a date. And I'm like, we have such a great communication, and I would really love to date him, but he just wasn't asking me. And sometimes you have to look for what they're not saying too.
Yes.
And I suspected he wasn't really interested, because if they're interested, they'll ask.
Right.
But I just said, hey, if this were, an option, I think it would be awesome to date you. Just put it out there. And he's like, I think you'd be awesome to date too, but I'm not in the space right now for that. And that's cool.
That's
and we're
an
still
honest
friends.
response, yeah.
But here's the good thing. Neither of us have to stress about it.
Right.
I can move on. I can go say, hey, handsome to some other guy without him going, oh, well, I guess she doesn't want to date me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It just makes things cleaner, easier,
Right.
Right.
Heidi asked me earlier, she was telling me a funny story, and she goes, what did you say? How blunt can I be? Or something like that. She's not sure of my level of the capacity of what she was talking about. So she ask clarifying questions. Okay. Ask, can we sit down and have conversations about a few hard things? Okay. Learn how to communication. A lot of people don't have a communication style, and they never communicate anything to anybody, really.
Right.
Boundaries need to be communicated in relationships. That tells you how much somebody is really respecting you or really into you. So learn some conversation skills. We are going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Heidi, for all your input. This was super fun. I'm super excited about our program. Watch for our program. We are going to sign off for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.